Hey there, welcome to episode 175 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 9:44 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. We normally release new episodes of this audio program on Tuesdays, often in the morning or pretty close to it. So I think we're on target. Today's title and topic, Municipal Partners versus Autonomy. It's a topic I've kind of covered here and there. I've kind of described some of the circumstances, but we're just going to spell it out today so that we have a more current sort of basis of conversation around this, especially with regard to some of our civic innovation outreach projects, City Camp, Smarter Smart City Challenge, maybe some other things. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, nor perhaps the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, let me tell you, you've come to the right place. Although we do have office hours meetings on Tuesdays, as of this recording, at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, you're always welcome to come to that too. You can visit our website. I'll tell you more, all you want to know about that. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a nonprofit public charity. It's a Nevada nonprofit public charity, 501c3. We were founded in June. I was going to say January. June. We started talking about it in January. Founded officially June 16th, 2022. I think it's the 16th, but it's definitely June of 2022. The idea was to reboot the previously existing Code for Vegas organization, which was a part of Code for America. If you are not aware of what Code for America is, that's okay. As we cultivate the culture of innovation here, that may become more apparent. We'll see. So we were founded as Code for Vegas. We renamed in, I think the following year. I think it was by October the following year, I think. I have that written down somewhere with paperwork sent to the IRS and so on. We renamed to Innovate for Vegas to be more inclusive. Not everything is code. The Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program is a audio program about what we're up to, how we're trying to accomplish it, who it should matter to and why, and other various topics along the way. We sometimes have interviews. It's been a very long time. It's been probably 165 episodes. It's been a while. I don't know that people are completely interested in what we're pursuing. If I were to go by the weather, I would say interest is not exactly where I would like it to be, but that's okay. We do have a newsletter now that's being published by LinkedIn, of all places. That will eventually migrate to a more broad engagement on the full internets. So the mailing list newsletter will exist outside of LinkedIn. It's kind of an experiment for now. Our LinkedIn page has just over 1,000 followers, which should be exciting, but we'd rather talk to everybody, not just people on LinkedIn. So that will be a move eventually. And that's what this audio program is about. It's partially so that we have some of our messaging out in the world for people to find and listen to. Maybe you're doing that right now. So that's the story. That's part of the story. And today we'll talk about the original Code for America business plan or model of engagement, I suppose, versus how we are doing things as we are a standalone organization. On that note, hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I will read to you, and the links for today's episode, which are just the normal two. Because we're not affiliated, we never were actually. Our new organization was never affiliated. I'm not going to link to Code for America. They're not really doing what we're doing anymore. So we just need the usual two, and if anything sounds interesting, there are search engines and your favorite AI chat. I was going to say AI chat client that will probably tell you some version of some story about some of this. Fingers crossed. So let's get started. It's getting hot. We're coming up on 10 a.m. It's already 91 degrees here in Vegas. Another indication says 94. It's getting warm. Summer is definitely upon us. Not only astrologically, but thermally. So let us begin. The roots of our organization are found in the original Code for Vegas, part of Code for America, and that model of operation. We have since gone another way. Ooh, that sounds exciting. We have two homepages, and both are in need of a little bit of updating, but we are coming to the end of our fourth fiscal year, so that's a good time to, especially if we do manage to seat a couple of extra board members. We have the two homepages. One is focused on our activities for everybody, our initiatives and the people who are working on them. We have many of the first and very few of the second, but we'll see if we can change that. By the way, tomorrow's newsletter on LinkedIn will be concerning how we regrow our cohort. Some ideas anyway. So yeah, we need to have some people that want to continue to work on things by showing up more than once. That would be nice. Innovate for Vegas, Innovate FOR Vegas, no space, period, ORG, our business website. Now remember, we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We have bylaws, we have a board of directors, we file our taxes, which I'm going to do we have to file them after June 30th. So sometime soon after. We don't really have a lot of financial activity as yet. That, if our plans come together, that will change this year. But for the moment, pretty simple. So our 990s are all up to date. You can find us in the tax exempt organization database with the IRS. You can find us in the entity database with the Nevada Secretary of State, Silver Flume, somewhere in there. I think they're rebuilding Silver Flume, by the way. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but we're in the entity database with the Secretary of State, Nevada Nonprofit Corporation. So our business website, Innovate for Vegas, same spelling, period, foundation. So that's the business side of the coin, or poker chip if you prefer. Why have two websites? Why not? Why not? That's how innovation works. Although more people need to explore that notion. We'll see. In the beginning, first of all, I've told the tales that make up parts of this topic, the municipal partnerships. This is a refresher for our coming fifth fiscal year, starting on July 1st, 2026, with some additional reflection on our experiences getting our city camp and Smarter Smart City challenges planned. It's one challenge, but there are multiple events through the year. It's a full year of challenge. It's actually going to be pretty exciting if people will actually be able to know that it's happening. Back in late 2021, the greater Vegas area was coming out of the lockdowns and the pandemic chaos and all and the so-called startup scene, a term that I do not like at all, but people use it, so you probably know what I mean. The so-called startup scene was sprouting from a long winter of dormancy, I suppose. This seemed like an interesting time to revisit the brigade that had existed previously. And to be honest, it may not have been an official brigade. The Code for Vegas organization formed in the early days, and I'm not sure if the brigade program as a formal named thing had existed, but Code for Vegas was definitely a part of Code for America. So we wanted to reboot Code for Vegas and re-engage our communities for some innovation. Sounds like a plan, right? Our attempts to connect with Code for America went south a bit during their what they called a revisioning, re-R-E, and then capital V, revisioning. How cool is that? The revisioning process for new brigades, which actually ended up being a harbinger of sorts for the coming program sunset. They never really even finished the revisioning process. Everything was put on, maybe in a couple of months. Really? We just want to pick up where we left off when the former stewards of the Code for Vegas organization departed the state. They were no longer living in Vegas, and so they shut it down and moved on. And the downtown project in Vegas was coming on the scene, so to speak. And so there was that shiny object, so to speak. So Code for Vegas, an extended hibernation, perhaps. It was just as well. So we were all set to reform Code for Vegas as the Code for Vegas Foundation, a standalone or autonomous civic volunteer organization formed as a Nevada nonprofit corporation rather than a fiscally sponsored club, with our 501c3 to follow, which it did pretty easily. We making us legitimate on June 16th. And of course, when you receive a determination from the IRS, it's a tax exempt organization, especially a 501c3, it's retroactive to your formation date. So June, I wrote down June 16th here, but I'm pretty sure that is the official day, June of 2022. I have shared the name change story countless times. We changed our name to Innovate for Vegas Foundation to avoid the notion that we were focusing only on code and to not deal with Code for America in that order. So the partnering part, that's a weird title. Partnering part. I was not part of the original Code for Vegas. Around that time, I had just relocated to Las Vegas from Silicon Valley, and I was working for Intel Corporation in the Maker Innovator Group, developing maker products and traveling to hackathons to work with participants in multiple cities and occasionally outside the country as a mentor or a helper. I don't know if there's an official title. So I wasn't there making a project. I was helping others, especially if there were Intel products, although I helped anyone with anything if they wanted it, no problem. That's the mindset. The theory of operation with Code for America did focus on establishing municipal partnerships and then driving projects with volunteer contribution from the brigade nearby, or maybe multiple brigades. This, from what I understand, is the story behind the City of Las Vegas open data platform. Code for America and City of Las Vegas put together an open data platform with volunteer input from Code for Vegas, and the open data platform persists today, and we've talked about that previously. So partnership was established by Code for America and then work with a local brigade or maybe brigades from other places, multiple brigades. Exactly how they conducted their projects is history at this point. To be honest, I'm not too happy with what I observed in the way this process worked as the brigade program was winding down. So I kind of caught the tail end. Their attribution, the way that they actually apportioned work, and then just the general notion, the way that they enabled or did not enable communication between brigades to make them discoverable by anyone. So I just have some issues. End of the day, I'm glad we did not rejoin Code for America. So that was probably a good thing. So we started by, so I'm not too happy winding down, but this was not for us to ponder too much since we never rejoined Code for America, as I just said. Okay. So we started by reaching out to our namesake, the City of Las Vegas. What could go wrong? Long story short, the people with the city who were familiar with Code for Vegas and that collaboration, Code for America, City of Las Vegas, and again on the open data platform, which is still in use today, were not in positions to make decisions anymore. Either they were moved on from City of Las Vegas employment, they were retired, So we were faced with a statement that to this day alarms me in a place which believes itself to be a global innovation hub and other such optimistic labels. Show us what you're working on. Now, this is not an outlandish request on its own, except that the ask was merely to begin a collaboration relationship moving forward with the initiatives we had spelled out at the time and whatever we might come up with from there, collaborating with City of Las Vegas. And we wanted to reach out to City of North Las Vegas, City of Henderson, City of Boulder City, unincorporated areas, the county itself. So we started with Las Vegas because there was this history. Now, the person I was speaking to, the person in charge of the innovation and disruption and whatnot, who has since moved on to work at NVIDIA, I believe, wanted us to already be working and have deployments to show. The statement was, we have to be careful who we get behind. And that was later denied. So I only have the fact that I was in an office in City Hall having this conversation. This was the most communication. Let me fix a little typo here. This was the most communication we've had with CLV, City of Las Vegas, to be honest. That was about it as far as plans for collaboration or any sort of help. Now, we did have a champion in the city staff. He has retired, and everything that was associated with his kind of, and he had been involved with the initial open data project. So he was at least familiar with the entire concept. Once he retired, every aspect of any sort of leg up that we received from the City of Las Vegas went away. That's no fun. Most outreach since then has met with silence. City managers, Office of Economic Development, Technology and Innovation, etc. No responses. With our other cities and the county itself, and even to some extent with the state through the GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, though the state would not necessarily be a part of our local pursuits, they prefer to, they would have to balance with other parts of the state to not favor one locality. We probably could have worked with the GOED with something with Hack for Reno for a statewide effort. Unfortunately, just the two. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people in the middle between Washoe and Clark counties, of course. But Hack for Reno has shut down without ever responding to any outreach from us, from our organization, not a single time. But they did just recently delete, or their domain name expired, or they've basically done away with the last remaining vestiges of Hack for Reno. Hack for Reno was a former Code for America brigade as well, and they never really did come back to life completely through the revisioning process. The Code for America people did send me to them, like, oh, make sure you go contact this person at Hack for Reno. They never responded, like I said. So from what I can tell, they've pretty much shut their doors. So we, Innovate for Vegas Foundation, are mostly it for Nevada as far as civic volunteer, civic innovation. Voluntation. That could work. Only I would know what I was talking about, but that's fine. That's not unusual. So partnering makes it weird, as it turns out. So while there is value in municipal partnerships, saying it is the first step, when it comes to civic innovation, there can be some downsides. Now, cities are not necessarily equipped to factor a project idea or a need in general into something that could be done by a civic volunteer cohort, right? There's a difference between working with a community organization and a vendor, right? A vendor with staff and budgets and resources and the finances to proceed on a project with some other billing and compensate, all the stuff that makes government so efficient. So working with a volunteer organization is maybe a different thing. They also may not be equipped to establish the funding for such an undertaking and to provide staff time to oversee or generally follow the progress. This is absolutely the case with the city of Las Vegas in my experience. I've been told in words that the city is pulling back from some expenditures. It's the nature of the beast. Something about legal settlements or some parcels of land. So things in Vegas are not necessarily aimed at enabling an organization such as ours. And whether they would have the wherewithal to monitor, participate in these projects, you'd have to allocate at least one staff person. And I don't know. I don't know that they're actually equipped to do that. General outreach, that is beyond City of Las Vegas, in general this area, is met with silence 99% of the time. And when there is some sort of response, there is often not a second response. That's always fun. This makes it, and again, I think it's just because nobody knows quite what to make of, we're not a startup. We're not going to contribute to the economy as far as they understand. I've described the labs program to spin off our initiatives into startups, but I don't know if they read that far. This makes it difficult to spend the time to continue pursuing these engagements when we don't get any responses. And if I had to guess, it comes down to a lack of experience with community-developed innovation and the lack of institutional memory from the days when Code for America was establishing these relationships from the top down. The vendor-style relationship is more familiar, and so they can work with Code for Vegas through Code for America. That's more of a known quantity. There are employees at Code for America. That would be their points of contact, presumably. So just a different setup. And then they'd be more likely to move forward with that, as far as I can tell, and we are not pursuing that mode of engagement. So the challenge is up ahead. Good times. Now, I will say, when you are surrounded by a culture of innovation, which we'll touch on later in this program, for example, when I was in band camp in Silicon Valley, when I was in Silicon Valley for about 15 years, in the usual places, doing the usual things for an engineer in Silicon Valley, I lived in Sunnyvale. I reached out to our city government for a couple of what I would say would be similarly innovative things. What can we do to help? Let me get the red carpet so we can roll it out for you. Why? Because everyone in Silicon Valley, since the mid-1800s, when it sort of began to emerge, basically understood the concept that, good ideas should not be tossed out. They should be at least considered. And so the experience there versus here, night and day. There are a number of examples that we could compare further, but let's move on to the final point of the partnering conundrum. The larger concern is project ownership. That is, if a project is proposed by the City of Las Vegas, for example, and the CLV, City of Las Vegas, then drives progress as oversight and funding, with an Innovate for Vegas cohort taking direction from this oversight. And by the way, are they volunteering to work for paid city employees? That's something I've never really been a fan of in these sorts of engagements. That was one of the things I had an issue with Code for America. Anyway, so if they're volunteering to work for city employees or their representatives, contractors, whatever, that's sort of a weird area. And again, I don't know that the CLV understands what to do with that. Who knows? This is far from ideal, of course, that you would have volunteers being told what to do by paid employees. Then what happens if CLV decides to halt, get some water here, decides to halt the project permanently? What if at some point they say, oh, we're going to pull the budget. We don't have the staff to cover this. We're not going to continue. So what happens to the effort already contributed? So if you've ever worked on something and someone else who may or may not have direct involvement says, oh, we got to shut it down. We got to cancel it. Got to kill it. Everybody who spent all their time and energy on this thing so far is going to be a little bit frustrated. I mean, that's human nature. If one wanders around through the former brigade repositories and GitHub, if they're still around, we find archived projects that were pursued for a year or so and then shut down. And that means anybody who worked on those projects is left thinking, well, what was the return? I learned something, but why did we have to shut down the thing? That doesn't make sense. It seems odd and is certainly no way to value the time, effort, and expertise of the people who do contribute to these civic volunteer efforts or endeavors or initiatives or projects. There's any number of synonyms. Take your pick. So what about autonomy, which is our mode? The opposite scheme really does make more sense for civic volunteers to pursue community elevating civic innovation. That is, rather than having a third party from municipal partnerships, form municipal partnerships and then drive projects from the top down, or working with a municipal partner directly where they drive and fund a project that does not include the resources assigned to the project. That does include so funding a project includes paying an employee, at least one, to oversee the project, because the volunteers, they will occasionally need resources, they'll need access to information and so on. So basically a point of contact at the very least. Maybe more, but and then it becomes tricky because we're a nonprofit charity. So how does the city, they can't really compensate volunteers. So it becomes a little bit tricky. That is another reason for the labs business model, which I have described before. So the cohort members, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, like I need to drink water. It's getting hot. Enjoy it while you can. The next couple of years we might have less. So instead of doing all that, the cohort members themselves drive the projects or initiatives based on their experience living in our locality and engaging with the people around them. So a good way to start with, there are things around me I would like to fix. And I could go and try to find people who will respond to my outreach, or we could just do it. Let's just do it ourselves. We'll fix the problem. We'll interact with our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, people we encounter around town, city, county, and we'll get feedback, and we'll probably develop something that's better and works better and solves the problem better than having to sit through meetings. So if the cohort designs the initiative and can contribute their civic volunteer time, effort, and expertise to progress toward viable solutions and usable outcomes, the cohort can engage directly with those people around them for whom they're engaging in these initiatives and ask directly, so what do you think? Co-creation is a real skill, and it doesn't need to be a technology skill. In fact, it might be better if it isn't, so you can interact with other human beings. The ability to solve real problems and collaborate collaborating with others with a variety of interests and skill sets, these are good things in general. They're like job and life skills. A vested interest in making things work is a bonus, perhaps. That's when you actually see that all the work that you did is paying off because people appreciate the effort and you've solved a problem. But in general, this is a good internal drive. This is a good internal drive to possess, and developing that is a good thing. Again, job and life skills. That was my water container. Rather than top-down project or program management and the possibility of projects coming to an end, the cohort itself owns the projects as open source development, code or otherwise, and this is not uncommon, right? We are the maintainers of the initiative and its component parts. And so they can continue working on any particular element of any initiative into the future, maintaining a useful version of whatever it is, which continues to offer value to the public and offering onboarding points in our organization as people come to the cohort to stay on something, to start on something that is already functional and deployed. So we have a project that was started N years ago and we're continuing. And if you want to start there, you'll see how our projects are managed through time to make the most of civic volunteer time, effort, and expertise, make sure everybody gets credit and so on. So it's a starting point to become familiar. And hey, someone might say, you know what, that one thing from 2 years ago, I found a bug. I didn't really say anything. Could I fix it? Well, let's learn about filing a bug and learn how to actually apply a fix to it and then do some testing and so on. So these are perfectly valid. It's perfectly valid to maintain projects into the future. And this is how the real world works also. I mean, you can end of life projects, but if people are still using them, we're not Google. We can maintain them. And it's something for newcomers to start with. So just like the real world sometimes. 2 more sections. So we're cultivating an innovation culture. I'm sorry, I can't really speak today. Cultivating innovation culture. Since we are off on our own, and since various municipal entities never really jumped on board in the early days, when it comes time to engage in community outreach, we have no allies. That's fun. Well, none that have made themselves known. There might be. Someone somewhere might be thinking, I didn't know you guys exist, so I can totally get the word out for you. Greater Vegas is a place thus far which lacks a pervasive culture of innovation. Some might argue that there is innovation taking place in Greater Vegas, and I am not arguing that. But remember, the question is whether there is a pervasive culture of innovation that may be found beyond companies and the relatively small startup focus groups and meetups that do get attention. There are some that don't get attention. That's another problem too, that hopefully will be a part of the culture of innovation cultivation that we can, more people should know about this stuff. So the small startup focus groups and meetups that get attention, they do get attention, but they don't really seem to return it. So there really isn't a flow of interest and outreach and engagement and curiosity and so on and so on. The innovation culture of Silicon Valley was pervasive, probably still is. Silicon Valley's changed a lot over the last decade, and I haven't been there in a while. And that means people in the general population recognize the notion of innovation and that it is happening all around. That was certainly true starting in around 1994, 95, 96, and it just went from there. And innovation has been happening in Silicon Valley long before that, but I mean the boom, the Silicon Valley .com area. And in fact, the people in the general population, they themselves might take part as well. They may say, hey, I can actually do this. There is a certain amount of critical mass here. I could become a part of an idea that I've been having instead of watching others do it. Innovation is not an exclusive notion. Funding, that's a different story. Getting money, that's an entirely different game. But the idea that you too can participate in this whole notion of solving a problem and being innovative, that's a good first step towards getting some funding when you think about it. There is very little in the way of recognition and celebration of those who do take on innovation here in Greater Vegas, and entrepreneurship for that matter. And outside of meetups of some events which do focus on tech innovation and entrepreneurship, and sometimes awards are given, or sometimes cash, like a seed funding or however they treat it, startup competitions, pitch competitions, and so on. These happen occasionally. These are still niche in the way that they are promoted and recognized, and they very rarely make the news unless you get big giant, unless you're in the club. So we are not in the club. Local media outlets really don't cover most unless you have the halo. content creating influencers and the population of Greater Vegas at large really don't have much connection to any of this. How often are you going to see Norma walking around Vegas talking about the startup scene? The time has come, perhaps, to include the population in this whole innovation notion. And by the way, the Downtown Project, if you're not familiar, they did have one of the components of the Downtown Project was the Downtown Podcast, which was actually a video production weekly. And they would introduce projects. They would have people on from the community of the Downtown Project geographical area, llama shaped or whatever it was. And they would talk like, what are you working on? What do you how's this going? Tell us what's up. So you kind of had your own media machine, and that's probably the way to go here, because the other media, the established media, doesn't really take an interest. And I've certainly found that to be the case firsthand, which is a good time. It's a good way to spend your time trying to contact press people who don't want to, they're not interested. Obviously, the City Camp Las Vegas 2026 event, and then the year-long Smart City Challenge in 2027 through 2027, the whole year. These programs are steps in this direction, and that is how we have been describing them. And to the very few people who are listening, this is on the, obviously here I've mentioned these, our LinkedIn page, Smart City Vegas, not much engagement. The newsletter, slowly growing. Both the newsletter for that and for Innovate for Vegas Foundation are slowly but surely. We'll see what happens with them through the summer. Outreach to our educator population has been completely unsuccessful. Outreach to our local press outlets, of course, for coverage early as the events approach has been met with complete and total silence. Were we to be demolishing a resort or building a stadium, we would get some attention, probably a lot. Well, we'd get a lot more than we're getting now. Otherwise, we appear to be on our own, which is fine. That's how innovation starts. The mother of invention, necessity. We need to get the word out. Right. Okay. Just want to make that clear. LinkedIn is not sufficient by any means. So limiting ourselves to LinkedIn we may as well just call it a day. The time, and we do have a website, but we obviously need to make it more engaging. So we're going to have to go to 11 on the amp. The time is past due to engage the culture direction, to try to get more people interested and involved, maybe in what we're doing, but maybe more in enabling them to take part in innovation themselves, to find out if we can cultivate the innovation part of it ourselves, the culture, and maybe with some help from the population itself. The feedback loop, right? I'll tell you two, and each of you tell two friends, and then they'll tell two friends, and so on and so on. And we'll get some shampoo and we'll make it happen. That's a commercial from many, many, many years ago for shampoo. You can look it up on YouTube, tell two friends, and so on. I don't know if you have to include that. So what next? And then let's assume that we have participation in the City Camp event, which is not a great assumption, but we'll cross our fingers. This is a national and perhaps global concept co-founded by the original founder of Code for America, by the way. So we'll see what we can make of it. But it's been going on for a while. They took a little break. In 2025, they brought it back, and in 2026, we'll see what happens. And this will be the first time there is City Camp Las Vegas. The City Camp is a brief event. I've seen in some examples on their event page for last year, some City Camp events appear to have been in an afternoon on one day. And while the intent is to not diminish City Camp by any means, it will ideally serve as an amuse-bouche, however you pronounce that, amuse-bouche. Yeah, I watch Top Chef. As an amuse-bouche of sorts to whet the appetite for more. This is where the year-long challenge comes in to extend the time frame and ideally the reach of our grasp to more people who will have more flexibility in how they can participate, and they're open to tackling anything that they think could be done better in our smart city to make it smarter, to enable and encourage more people to at least become aware of and perhaps participate in civic innovation in their own backyard, so to speak. We continue to reach out, or more make ourselves available lately. I mean, continuing outreach gets a little old when you don't get anything back. So we're making ourselves available lately to other cohorts beyond Greater Vegas, beginning, of course, with our disappeared peers in Reno and anywhere else around Nevada, and then anywhere else at all. The theory is a cohort of even one person can begin to make a difference. I've been basically one person this whole year, so I've been spending my time on this outreach stuff, and I think trying to make a different kind of difference would be more sensible. But you can become a part of a fabric or maybe a mosaic, and we've definitely talked about that before. Mosaic of people and cohorts who look around and see not chaos but opportunity. The beginning of the beginning, we could say. Thank you, Winston Churchill. That was a paraphrase, though. He didn't really say that. Where Code for America left its mark, and it's still around, by the way, they just don't have a brigade program. In a space where civic volunteers could make a dent in civic innovation in real ways, their model may not have worked, my view. There's no more brigade program. That isn't a sign that it was rock solid and firing on all cylinders. So who knows? Who knows? It is no longer in place, the brigade program, if I could not have an extra T in there. It is no longer in place, so we can now look around and notice that people who are innovative and who are motivated to focus their civic volunteer time, effort, and expertise on elevation of communities around them might find those with similar interests near and far, and they might start a cohort of their own to work with their own local colleagues and neighborhoods and communities and so on. And they can work with others with the same mindset, near and far, and they don't really need to ask for permission or approval to make their communities better. And other cohorts might be willing to help, and you can help them make their communities better, and vice versa. And everybody starts sharing like it's about to make a difference or something crazy. It has been done in the open source software world as a very, very public and highly visible example. And it could be done here. So what are you waiting for? That's all I got to say about that. Hopefully, now it's June 23rd. We're looking for September 20th for the City Camp Las Vegas 2026 event. We've invited people to participate in a pre-planning Wednesday meetup for a couple of months now. 0 people have taken us up on that. We've reached out directly to some of the people I already mentioned. No interest. So when we launch this, it will be interesting to see how many people will participate. Between now and then, we must step up our game and take on some of the outreach ourselves beyond LinkedIn and remove any dependence, reliance, or any confidence in our local media outlets because they've already answered our questions. We know exactly what they think. So we need to get the word out. We need other people to recognize that, oh, I too can get the word out because I see the value in this. And we will attempt to get the general participation started towards the end of August. We'll start signups, and that will give people days, weeks, maybe a whole month. I don't know if it might be 3 weeks. I'll ask the people at the meetup, and it will be a universal and unargued, no contention decision. Anyway, the people who wish to participate can sign up. Then by the time we have the City Camp Day on the 20th, they will have had time to ponder their submission, their discussion. And then on the day of, this being an unconference, we'll decide how we want to proceed, whether it's discussions and conversations about how much progress people made and what they learned. We can have presentations. We can do whatever the people who are participating want to do. That's how an unconference works. The take-home from City Camp will then be applied, the take-home lessons will then be applied to the beginning phases of the Smarter Smart City Challenge, which will take place starting after New Year's in January 2027. So it'll all work out. It might be just me, and maybe you'll come, and maybe it'll just be 2 people, or maybe 3. My hope is there will be at least 100 people for City Camp, and at least 12 to 1,500 for participants, actual participants. They can break up into teams and so on, but actual individuals, that seems like a completely reasonable volume for a county, Greater Vegas, 2.4 million people. That's like 0%. So that's the goal, and it won't be accomplished by LinkedIn and nobody really spending a second moment to engage. Liking, commenting, nah, not going to do that. Certainly not going to help spread the word to other people. So the LinkedIn population is not totally on board with what the notion is. So we need to have the population of Greater Vegas, who I'm sure some people out there will say, oh yes, this looks interesting, let me tell my friend. that would almost double, probably more than double at this point, the outreach multiplication factor for everyone who does that. Because right now it's just one person. I'm not going to say who it is, but you probably know. Anyway, I thank you for listening as always. Thank you for considering your participation in the upcoming City Camp event, September. We'll start some sign-ups. We got to do some stuff before then to enable the recognition and celebration component of the City Camp and then the eventual Smarter Smart City Challenge. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff to do. So I should end it here so I can get back to work. All right. So again, thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. Thanks for telling 2 friends about all of this. Take care now. Bye-bye.